Wait till you do the math, if you haven't already, on this hurricane.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
I just want to start with thoughts and prayers for the people in Houston and the vicinity. I'm sure you're feeling that way too, so I'm Johnny come lately to that sentiment, no doubt. This is unbelievable. I don't have much to say about it. We will tomorrow as we start to gather more information and give you some better advice as to what we ought to be thinking about when it comes to hurricanes and that kind of thing. Welcome into my state of mind on this Monday evening, but I don't know whose state of mind doesn't have the people of Texas on it, in it, and all around it. Ian Donnis is here. First time Ian's been on the program, a longtime business friend, and I think one of the leading journalists, no doubt, in the state. He certainly has the State House covered from soup to nuts, and he went to the dark side, to public radio, a little while back, and we'll have some fun with him on that. Let's just take a look, though, at what the FEMA directors had to say on this gosh-awful storm.
This is a landmark event for Texas. Texas has never seen an event like this. This is going to eclipse Ike. It's going to eclipse Allison that occurred in 2001. And based on the benchmarks of those storms, we know it's going to be large.
All right, so if you do the old-fashioned math, an inch of rain is equivalent to 10 inches of snow. They're expecting cumulatively 50 inches of rain in that region. Can you imagine 500 inches of snow cumulatively over less than a week's period of time? Can you imagine 60 feet of snow? Now, I know we're going to have to get some meteorologists to kind of work that out for us, because that seems to be earthly impossible. I mean, I just don't know even how you compute that. But then again, look at the people with water up to their necks in their own neighborhoods and try to figure that out. We'll have some more information tomorrow on how you can help if you haven't already. In the meantime, our president, in the midst of it, while reportedly running operations efficiently from Camp David, I always question whether it's him or not, of course, it's a big, big government, manages to slip in this little ditty.
Trump pardoned embattled former Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio after hinting at it all week. The president tweeted his decision, calling Arpaio an American patriot who kept Arizona safe. The 85-year-old lawman was convicted of ignoring a judge's order to stop racial profiling in traffic patrols. Arpaio enthusiastically supported the president on the campaign trail and gave a speech at the Republican National Convention.
Well, I'm very honored. It's a great privilege for the president to issue this paper, pardon. He's a big supporter of law enforcement. I know it came from his heart.
The presidential pardon comes before Arpaio was even sentenced to potential jail time.
Ian is with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to be here.
We got a lot of local stuff that I want to talk about here tonight. What's your take on the pardon?
You know, it's interesting, Dan. I did a story within the last year about how Johnston, a traditionally Democratic town, went for Trump in a big way last year. And one of the big issues among people that I spoke with was immigration. And that kind of makes you question mark, right? Because Johnston, last time we checked, isn't near the Mexican border. But I think that's an issue that really resonates with Trump's base and helps to explain why he made this pardon. You know, it enrages his critics, but it seems like a very characteristic move for the president.
Characteristic. I mean, that's a very journalistic and diplomatic way to position it. I think it's all true. He just seems to be governing to his base right now, though. He doesn't seem to have any interest whatsoever in broadening his leadership exercise. I mean, I'm not even talking about political appeal. I'm just talking about running the joint, you know?
Yeah,
right?
And we've seen a lot of, I mean, this whole immigration issue has festered for many years under Republican and Democratic presidents, so it's not strictly a Democratic or Republican issue. But, yeah, I mean, I think you're on the money with your analysis.
So last week I asked Tim and Ted, Tim White, Ted Nesi, about how they felt about the journalistic constant barrage and the attack. Ran a headline from last week that's still effective for this conversation. Have you had a thought on the way your business, our business, has been pummeled by this White House?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always been a tension between media and government. There should be a tension. We have an adversarial relationship, but it's worrisome that a lot of Trump supporters who might not have an appreciation for the role that we in the media play are getting kind of amped up about this. And I think, you know, we're not here asking to be loved, but the media does have an important role in helping to share information about what our government is doing. I think, you know, we look at it as a watchdog function. It's not a partisan function. And, you know, again, people don't have to love us, but I think they should respect the role that media has in helping to make for a more informed electorate.
You've always had an interesting role in this community, having worked for the Phoenix in running that operation, more or less known as kind of a liberally sided newspaper when it was in its heyday. Yet I thought that your journalism was not really flavored very much by that stuff. Now you're working for public radio, which are going to be perceived as a left-sided media outlet. But I think your pragmatism in your journalism, I think, kind of stands out. Any thought about how left-perceived media is faring in this whole dynamic?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, first of all, I would question the left-perceived thing. I mean, there certainly are some people who believe that. But if you listen to NPR, you will hear a very balanced presentation of Republican and Democratic views. You hear interviews with Republican members of Congress.
It's calmer.
It's calmer, and
it's calmer than the place that I work at. You know, I think I've calmed down over time, but it's a calmer presentation.
Some people have a false dichotomy that Fox News is here and NPR is here. I see NPR and public radio being in the middle, and we get both sides of the story. We don't have an ideological bias in our reporting, and you know, you can point to stories that I've done on 38 Studios. It's, you know, stories that our other respected colleagues in the local media do. It's about trying to serve the public interest. So I kind of, you know, people might have that stereotype, but I don't agree with it.
Well, I don't agree with it either when it comes to your work. I think it stands on itself, but I think it's easier to take the ideology away the more local the story you're following. Right? I mean,
yeah.
So NPR perhaps on a more national basis, there would be an argument for, look, let's put it this way: liberal perspective on the broadcast airways, specifically talk radio, has never been a profit project. So having folks who are on the left side of the aisle, staples on a national forum, be it public radio, there's a place for it. And so I think you can identify public radio as a little bit left or nationally, but I think you're right. I don't think there's, you know, take it out the garbage, running municipal government and even state government to a certain level. Ideology is more kind of a sidebar than it is intrinsic in the story, don't you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And again, I'd come back to, you know, I defy anyone to listen to NPR and, you know, find the coverage anything other than balanced. You know, it really, you do hear from Republican members of Congress very frequently, and I think it's a very balanced presentation.
You were mentioning to me before the show that you guys got a new antenna. I'm not going to put you in the general seat and speaking for the station, but you are focusing a little bit more on mass now and broaden your horizons a little bit.
Yeah, people can find us on the dial at 89.3 FM. For a long time after Rhode Island Public Radio was established, reaching the whole state was a challenge due to the technical layout of the land, and we got the UMass Dartmouth signal, and that covers more of the state. We're online at ripr.org. Our newsroom is growing, and you know, that's a nice thing to have when a lot of the media is in retreat. So I would invite people, if they haven't visited us, to check us out.
Talk to me about the digital side of the news. It's a growing, for us veterans, it's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean,
veterans.
Yeah,
better grammar.
I start my day with the Providence Journal every day. I wish the best for my colleagues at the Projo, and they might have as many readers if you combine the print and digital as they ever had, but as you know, the digital ads are just not as lucrative, and that's you know, we've lost the economic underpinning for journalism in this country due to the internet. That's a big problem, but we have a different model at public radio, nonprofit model. We get most of our support from our listeners here in Rhode Island. That's another misperception that some people have. You know, we don't do that, but in fact we get more than 93% of our support from people and organizations right here in Rhode Island.
I have my own interesting thoughts. I think they're interesting about public radio, but I'll spare them in this conversation. I think they have a valuable place in the community, no doubt. And you know, this is an important news organization that Ian participates in, no doubt. When we come back, we'll manifest some of that journalistic work. He's been doing some work on gubernatorial runs, where the governor is, what the Republican chatter is all about, you know, the phone booth. Stay with us.
Alan Fung's making it pretty well known that he is running. So he's basically telling the other people, if you want to run, you got to run against me. And I'm starting early to be ready for it.
He hasn't admitted that formally, but I guess he spit it up to some folks. You reported that. Alan Fung, the mayor of Cranston's going to take another crack at this thing. What do you know about that?
Well, it was kind of funny because Justin Katz was at a meeting of Republicans in Tiverton.
From the Ocean State Current and the Rhode Island Center for Research. What is the Rhode Island? What is it?
Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity.
There you go. There you go. Justin Katz.
And you know, I think Justin is credible in reporting on something like that. He said the mayor was very straightforward in saying he's in the race. It was very funny because a day or two later, the mayor had a press availability where I showed up, all the TV showed up, the journal showed up, and he was, you know, you can't be a little bit pregnant, but he was doing his best to say the only thing I'm looking at is running for governor, but I'm not saying I'm running for governor. So he's doing this little dance, but he obviously is very well known statewide. He ran a very respectable run against Governor Raimondo in 2014, lost by only 4 points. But I think the Republican primary next year will be very lively. Joe Trillo is also running, and Trillo was the...
I'm not sure he sticks it out.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, you know, he's 74 years old. I don't think he has a political future in terms of running for other offices if this doesn't work out. I think he feels like he has something to say. He's closely aligned with Trump, and if Trump were to come here to campaign for Joe, that could make life difficult for Alan Fung.
Yes.
Yeah, because
yes. But if that's what Joe is banking on, he's a political dead man walking for the statewide race.
I think it would.
Dead man walking. So if all you want to do is win the division,
yeah,
maybe that's what you do. I mean, if you've got a broader thing, and of course, if Joe has, you know, the president come here, and I think that might be a stretch. Although, you know what, the president he's all about popularity ratings and elections, right? And governing is not necessarily his priority. So 2018 could be a whirlwind, but Joe still might want to be thinking about running as an independent, which then really screws up the entire thing. Because if Lane Chafee gets back in, do you think he's going to do that? Do you think he's going to do that? It sounds like he's going to do that.
You know, it's hard to say. I really question whether his wife is on board with that, and that could be an important... Is
that where the cash flow is?
It could be part of the cash flow. That's an important factor, right? None of us wants to be in the doghouse.
He certainly sounds like he wants to.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been on our radio anytime he gets invited, and all he does is throw mud at this governor.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of it's revisionist history, all the way back to the pension conversation, that he thinks he will say he was as responsible for pension reform, perhaps even more so than Governor Raimondo, which is a laugh a minute. I mean, that was her baby. Did he have to cooperate? Yeah, begrudgingly, and actually didn't cooperate very. If you go back and remember the time, he wasn't holding her hand by any stretch.
No. And it was also noteworthy when the Robert Walsh of the NEA RI got really upset when Raimondo vetoed the Evergreen contract thing. That was not necessarily a surprising move, but
in this last session.
Right. And, you know, Walsh had told us in an interview at our station a couple of months ago his union was likely to back Raimondo, and then he did a complete 180, and they're looking for someone else to run against Raimondo. So Chafee could be that guy, but I'm not convinced.
But Chafee was their guy last time around, and that didn't shake out. Is there anybody on that frontier that you think is intra-Democratic Party material to give this well-entrenched, financially full governor a run?
I think if it's anybody, it's probably Chafee. I'd say there's a very small chance Clay Pell takes another shot at it, but I don't expect that to happen. I think Chafee is the Raimondo alternative on the Democratic side. If it's not him,
well, we've got headlines all over the place here that show Governor Raimondo is just absolutely full of cash, including a lot of out-of-state cash. And we can have a philosophy that you ought to raise money from the district that you're running in and/or the state that you're running in. She's an interesting character. I don't think she's ever going to get over, low 40% popularity in this state. Yet with a broken up race, she could be a lock. Yeah.
I mean, like you say, I mean, she has had trouble polling above, she hasn't hit over 50%. The apex of her popularity was when she was treasurer, so a larger field would clearly help her.
Down the line, others, you think Flanders takes a shot at White House?
Yeah, he seems to be moving ahead.
Think that's a kamikaze mission?
For which one?
Flanders. I mean, the power of Senate incumbency is extremely difficult to turn over.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the question is why is Flanders looking at Senate rather than governor? He could be a very formidable
and a very effective governor, I think.
He would certainly have a following for that. And so the question is, why Senate rather than Gov? And
what's the answer?
The only speculation I've heard is that he just sees this as a role that is more appropriate for himself. But I haven't heard that right from the horse's mouth.
Being a governor is hard work.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you're responsible for, a lot that you're blamed for. And taking credit for things becomes more and more difficult. You recently spoke with Representative Chippendale from the Republican Party about some things going on there. Any insights in terms of the Republican Party in general?
Yeah, Mike had a really interesting observation that with this growth in the progressive caucus in the legislature, the progressives and the Republicans could potentially team up on issues against the kind of more mainstream Democrats, whether the progressives have the intestinal fortitude to do that, I think is.
But what is the nature of that? I mean, okay, so you got this woman who is going to replace Teresa Pavia-Weed. She beats out Mr. Smith, the Republican, in that general special election. Dawn seems to be, and we have to have her in soon, a progressive. The House has a little bit more, I would say, viable, growing components of progressives, but the Republicans hooking up with the progressives for what reason? What's the mission statement there? Well, what's the tactical end result? Just power and authority, because they're not matched up on issues.
Yeah, I mean, Rep. Chippendale cited as an example the budget. There might be things the Republicans don't like about the budget. There might be things the progressives don't like about the budget. Those could be different gripes, but their combined opposition could potentially make life more interesting in the House, where you're right, there's more of a progressive caucus there. I don't know, maybe the progressives are too few in number at this point to...
No, I think they're formidable. I mean, there's a formidable sentiment there. In every election, it seems like there's one or two more labeled, branded progressives that are getting elected. But this just is more of the Republican Party not knowing its own way. I mean, the idea that they feel like, it feels like opposition to authority and or majority for the sake of it, as opposed to... if you're going to move the state forward in your ideological framework, it seems to me that you get more from the speaker and that group on the issues that you reportedly stand for by teaming up to beat the progressives. I mean, the Democratic tent is large right now, spectrum-wise.
Really large. And even though Speaker Mattiello might at heart be more of a conservative Democrat, he rules as a pragmatic. He knows he's got to give some stuff to the more liberal members of his caucus, some stuff to the more conservative members. Can't, rule too much one way or the other. So you make a fair point.
There's progress on the PawSox front. And I say that in quotes. We'll get Ian's take on that when we come back. Stay with us.
I can say to the PawSox is there's not a better place in the universe than Pawtucket, Rhode Island for them. And for them to go anywhere else would be foolish.
All right, well, I'm just looking on my phone here. Ian was kind enough to point us to a release that we all should have in our inboxes, which releases the hearings for the PawSox slash Slater Park, whatever the hell it is called. We have September 14th, September 26th. This is at the State House, then Tolman High School in Pawtucket, then URI in October, another one in October at New England Institute of Technology, and then Roger Williams on October 12th, and then at Bryant University on October 19th. So 6 public hearings on this stadium. What's your take?
This, I think Senator Connolly, as you heard, has been very invested in having a transparent process, and there's a lot of skepticism, cynicism, as you know, about spending public money on a PawSox stadium. It's hard to know how serious Worcester is about matching Rhode Island's financial offer, but if there's a public, transparent process that could help potentially to bolster some public confidence in this proposal. There are always going to be people who don't want a single dime of public dollars or public
And they're the ones that show up.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You know, and I went to McCoy Friday night. It was the last home stand of the series for the PawSox. I hadn't been in a couple of years. I was reminded what a really joyful place that is. Unlike Fenway, people actually pay attention to the game. You know, they're not playing Words with Friends on their phone. There are a lot of young kids.
Is that what's going on at Fenway?
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
And you love to go to Fenway.
I do.
You are a Sox fan of the highest proportion.
I enjoy it, and I pay attention when I go.
Right.
But there are a lot of people who it's just a see and be seen type thing. But at McCoy, you know, there are a lot of young kids with their mom, with their dad, and, you know, they're not the big names like at Boston, but it's a pure form of baseball.
We got a real weird dynamic out there. We got an electorate that's 38 studios burned, and rather than hold the government accountable in real time, they're now, you know, pollable and talk radioable, screaming bloody murder about how private-public partnerships are not their cup of tea. They don't want taxpayer money spent on this anymore. So we're going to have this lingering cloud over us from 38. All these hearings, Connolly told us in that seat, are a response to 38. Somewhere along the line, these guys have got to lead, follow, or get out of the way and make a decision. If they wait till the winter, it gives Worcester all the time to put this formidable deal together.
Yeah, and I talked with the governor maybe a month ago. There was a news conference at the airport about a new airline, and I asked her if she, at that time it was clear the budget resolution was on its way, and I asked her, was she going to step up her advocacy for the stadium? To my surprise, she said no. And I think you
Why?
That's the question. Well, because it's a politically controversial issue.
Because she doesn't want, we're getting too close to 18.
Yeah. And you make the point very well, Dan. Someone's got to lead on this, or else the PawSox are going to go.
Where's the authenticity in politics? You know, you thought that she'd be authentic, and now she's calculating every percentage point in terms of 18 re-election, isn't she?
Well, it's a controversial issue. She's not unique among politicians in treading lightly on a touchy subject.
Like I said, objective, pragmatic journalist. Good to see you, buddy.
It's good seeing you, Dan.
Appreciate you coming in. Final word on what's up for the rest of the week when we come back. Stay with us. I will get a little bit more perspective on this hurricane in Houston, obviously from a local perspective and what we should be worrying about during hurricane season. And some sports injuries are in the news. Pretty provocative. We'll tackle that as well. Get it? See you tomorrow on the radio, or hear you tomorrow, or you hear me. You know how it works. 3 to 6 on WPRL. Good night.